All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on our webinar today, Flight Planning with ForeFlight Dispatch. This is another one of our dispatch walkthrough webinars in which we will take a look at the interface and the workflows that are involved in ForeFlight Dispatch and just demo how quick and easy it is to plan flights and collaborate with other flight planners, as well as demonstrate some of the newer features in Dispatch. So helping with the webinar today are myself, Sam Taylor. I'm a senior content marketing specialist at ForeFlight. We also have Caitlin Galloway. She's the customer success manager, and she gives demos like this to new dispatch customers all the time. And we also have Josh Pava, who is a dispatch QA and product analyst. So he's pretty deeply involved in developing dispatch and adding new features. And he will be providing some color commentary on some of the more advanced features. Our agenda for today will start off with an overview of Dispatch, looking at its main features and really its main values. Next up, Caitlin will take over and go into the main Dispatch demo, and she'll give an overview of the flights list, which is where you can view all of the flights that are being planned or actively flown on your account. We'll then go into two example flights planned using Dispatch. The first will be a transatlantic flight from the US to the UK, which will utilize ETP and ETOPS and just demonstrate how capable Dispatch is in planning those kind of oceanic flights. And the second flight will be an EMEA flight from the UK to Dubai, which will also demonstrate even more advanced capabilities, such as very complex route constraints and having to avoid certain airways and other advanced features like that. Between those two flights, we will also provide a demo of the new custom navlog builder, which is one of the newest features in Dispatch and a really, really popular feature that allows you to customize ForeFlight's navlog in any way you see fit and really make it as applicable as possible to your own operation. And then that navlog will be shared with all pilots on the account. So really, really flexible feature, and we're very proud to show it off in this webinar. And finally, we will end the webinar with some live Q&A. All right, so before we begin, just a couple housekeeping items related to the GoToWebinar platform that we're using for this webinar. You can ask any questions you want via the GoToWebinar message panel on the right. You just click that button that looks like a question mark, and it will open up the panel, and you can type in your questions and submit them. We'll be responding to as many questions as we can as you submit them during the webinar. So even though there is a Q&A portion at the end of this webinar, please don't wait until the Q&A portion to submit any questions you have. Feel free to submit a question as soon as it pops into your head, and we will try to answer it as best we can, as quickly as we can. We do highly recommend that you join this webinar from a computer, a desktop computer or a laptop computer, but not a mobile device like an iPhone or an iPad. We tend to find that people have more audio problems if they join from a mobile device. So if you are joining from a mobile device, there are some settings you might be able to tweak within the GoToWebinar interface on your device to get it working again. But we do highly recommend that you join from a computer. And finally, this session is being recorded, and it'll be accessible at foreflight.com/onfrequency later. So let's get started with a brief overview of ForeFlight Dispatch itself, what it can do, and who it's for. So Dispatch is a powerful component of ForeFlight Web that delivers next-generation, multi-user, schedule-to-mobile flight planning, resulting in greater efficiency and productivity for flight departments of any size. So a couple of key things to note from this short description. It is entirely based on ForeFlight Web. It's not a feature that is added to mobile like most other ForeFlight features are. It's entirely on the web. And one of the benefits of that is that you can use it from any modern internet browser. It's not restricted to iOS or anything. But one of the key features of Dispatch is that it allows your flight department to work together more efficiently. It sort of integrates many of the different parts of your flight department, such as your scheduling, your trip support, and your pilots. It helps bring them all together and helps them communicate on a shared platform. So moving into some of those particular aspects of Dispatch, you have the centralized flight status view. And this is one of the key features of Dispatch, which provides a single centralized place where you can view all past and present and future flights, whether they're planned, filed, or completed by anyone in your organization. So this is one of the really key features that allows anyone in your flight department to keep tabs on a flight, to edit a planned flight, to go in and file a flight. And it really just allows a much greater level of collaboration within your flight department. And after this, we'll look at a couple of other specific integrations that Dispatch supports, including the scheduling integration, the trip support integration, which is relatively new, as well as the integrated flight releases to ForeFlight Mobile. So first up, we have Dispatch's scheduling integrations. This is one of the key features of Dispatch that allows it to bring newly scheduled flights from your scheduling system directly into Dispatch. It does this via its scheduling API, which just automatically monitors all of the flights in your scheduling system. And as soon as you add a new one, it recognizes that and it pulls it into Dispatch along with all of the key information, such as the assigned crew members, the time and the date of the flight, the airports that the flight will be between, etc. With this integration, you can avoid the cumbersome task of having to copy and paste newly scheduled flights between different platforms or rely on email and other things to get that new flight from your scheduling system into your flight planning system. With this integration, Dispatch just does it on its own. You can see at the bottom of this slide some of our currently supported scheduling integrations with some of the more popular scheduling providers, and we are always looking at integrating with additional providers, so you can expect this list to grow in the future. Next up, we have Dispatch's trip support integration, and this is a relatively new addition, which is in many ways just as powerful as the scheduling integration. What this allows you to do is, if you have a designated trip support provider, such as Jeppesen ITPS or Honeywell, and those are the two that we currently support. You can see them at the bottom, but we will also support additional providers in the future. If you have a contract with one of these trip support providers, you can give them access to log in to your Dispatch account directly, just the same way that one of your existing flight planners or pilots could, and they can then work directly with those flights alongside your own staff. So what they see when they sign into Dispatch is exactly the same as what one of your own flight planners would see when they sign into Dispatch. And they have special access that allows them to work in Dispatch, but not necessarily mess with other parts of your organization or your ForeFlight account. So it's a rather restricted access to only Dispatch, and it allows them to support you in the exact same platform that you use to plan every day. Another key benefit that ties into the next integration we'll talk about is the fact that trip support providers can easily upload flight documents directly to crew members via this integration. Because Dispatch can deliver flight documents straight to ForeFlight Mobile, this means that if your trip support provider is the one who usually works up a flight itinerary, a passenger list, all of these key documents that you need for every flight, rather than having to rely on email once again, like we said with the scheduling integration, this means that they can simply go into Dispatch, drag and drop the files onto the flight, hit a button, and then those files are immediately delivered to the pilot's iPads and accessible right in ForeFlight Mobile. So it's an incredibly easy and tight integration that just allows you to take out many of the cumbersome steps that would slow down this process before Dispatch. And now lastly, we have the integration with ForeFlight Mobile, the integrated flight releases. Like I said, Dispatch integrates seamlessly with ForeFlight Mobile. So even though Dispatch itself is confined to just the web application, it does integrate directly with ForeFlight Mobile. And so as part of your flight planning, you can assign flights to designated crew members. And then once you release the flight, that flight immediately appears in ForeFlight Mobile in the flight's view, and it looks and behaves almost exactly the same as it would if the pilot had planned the flight themselves on their own iPad. And so once again, rather than having to deal with emailing flight plans or relying on phone calls and other ways of updating the pilots with new flight information, you can just hit a button and the flight will immediately appear on their iPad. So especially if you're an operation that is already using ForeFlight Mobile for some of your flight planning or perhaps in-flight use. This is an integration that is just out of the box, completely seamless. The other aspect of Dispatch, besides the collaboration aspect, the ability for it to integrate many of your different components of your flight department onto a single platform, is the fact that Dispatch provides truly advanced flight planning. It goes above and beyond the level of flight planning that you get with ForeFlight Performance or ForeFlight Business Performance on the iPad, and it adds many new additional capabilities, very powerful flight planning capabilities that are only accessible via Dispatch. And some of them you can see here on the screen. We do support ETP and ETOPS only in Dispatch, and so you can set up an oceanic flight and set up those diversion airports and diversion scenarios right in Dispatch. And we do support many other more advanced capabilities than what you would get just with ForeFlight Mobile. So with that, I'll hand it over to Caitlin to kick us off with the main demo.
Thanks, Sam. So today we're going to do a normal walkthrough of Dispatch, but we're definitely going to point out a couple of new features that we've added to Dispatch in the last year. So we're going to start here on foreflight.com. And when you have Dispatch turned on for your account, you'll notice at the top left here, you've got a Dispatch tab. When you click into the Dispatch tab, you've got your Dispatch dashboard. So this is going to show all of the flights that have been generated. Either someone's planned them, they've come in from a scheduling system. And right now we've just got a full chronological list of all of the flights that are planned. There's a lot of different ways that we can filter this list. Starting at the top left, we can filter by the filing status of the flight. We can also filter by time. So if we want to see, right now we're looking at plus or minus 1 week. We can set a custom time frame as well. Moving over to the right, we can sort by who created the flight. So whether it was a dispatcher or a planner here in Dispatch, whether it came in through the scheduling system or the pilot created it on their iPad. Over on the right here, we've got watch list and search, and we can use these together or separately. Watch list is really great for setting a default view for a planner. So they can automatically filter this list. They only see what they want to see. For example, if they want to sort by a certain aircraft type and they don't want to see any other aircraft, we can type in GLF5, hit enter, and now we're only seeing flights with this aircraft type. If we want to narrow it even further, we could bring search into it, and maybe we're looking for a specific pilot in command. We'll type Brian, and now we're only seeing flights for this aircraft type and with this pilot. You can see we've definitely narrowed down the amount of flights. Really easy to find exactly what you're looking for here. To the right of each flight, we have the edit button. That'll take us into the detailed flight planning view. And then if we click on more, we have some quick access options. So we could quickly file the flight plan, release it to the crew, and grab relevant documents. So from here, I'm going to start from scratch and build a brand new flight. So I'm going to click New Flight at the top left. Starting here on the Flight tab, we've got an aircraft selected. I've already got the one that I want selected. We're going to be planning with the Gulfstream G550, but any aircraft that we've licensed for dispatch are going to show up in this list. We're going to depart from Teterboro, and we're going to go to Stansted. And when you're typing in an airport identifier or an airport name, you'll notice we've got this little pop-up here. You're going to see a quick view of the METAR, longest runway. And once you've selected that airport, you can click on this Info button, and it's going to bring up METAR, TAF, NOTAMs. And even more detail, you can go to the airport page. Moving over to the right, we can set a time of departure or we can set a time of arrival. We can also plan in Zulu or local time. So let's go ahead and set this for a little bit earlier. We can throw in a call sign if we want. And then moving down, we can select our alternates. So when we click on the alternate fields, we're going to give you alternate suggestions. Again, we're going to show you that weather, runway information, the distance. So let's go ahead and choose Heathrow as our alternate. We can add a second alternate or a takeoff alternate if we want. And since we're flying into Europe, we can select alternate routing. So I'll go ahead and click Show. And what our system will do is we can click Auto and we'll go ahead and suggest some waypoints to your alternate for you. Or if you know exactly what you want to put in, you can click Manual. And you could just type that in right there. One thing that we just added, which is really, really great, is that now we can select an alternate cruise profile. So we've just got another option here. We can click in here and we can choose exactly which cruise profile we want to use if we need to fly to that alternate. I'll go ahead and tuck that away, and we'll move down to the fuel section. The first field we have to select here is our cruise profile. And if we click this open, this is going to show you the cruise profiles directly from the manual, directly from the manufacturer. So you can choose, if you know exactly what you want to fly for this flight, you can choose your cruise profile. If you're not exactly sure, you can click on the Cruise Advisor, which is specific to dispatch. And this is going to let you compare up to 3 cruise profiles at a time. You can change these if you want, but what we're going to show you here is your best time and your best fuel. So you can see in green, here's our best time, and here's our best fuel, long-range cruise. That makes sense. So you can definitely choose what makes sense for your mission. I'm going to go ahead and leave it with Mach 8.5 for now. And let's move over to taxi fuel. So we can adjust this if needed, especially if we're at maybe a bigger airport. And then we can choose a fuel policy. So just like you would see in ForeFlight Mobile, you've got 5 fuel policies to choose from. If you need to land with additional fuel, if you need to carry extra fuel, you can make these changes and we're going to calculate for that. I'm going to go ahead and leave it with minimum fuel for this flight. Over here, we can choose an FBO. We'll go ahead and choose Harrods Aviation. You can link your fuel cards here. So if you have fuel cards, you can connect those and we will show you your contract pricing. Just below, we've got our advanced fuel options. And this section is already opened up for us. But the first thing we want to look at here is reserve policy. So this is another option in dispatch where, depending on where you're flying or what part you're operating under, you can choose different reserve policies. Since we're flying into Europe, it went ahead and switched me over to EASA Commercial. But we could also set a manual reserve policy. We could plan in minutes as well. If we need to, we can add a contingency policy. We've got 5% here. And for our wind options, we have forecast, historical, and fixed. So we can use historical winds if we're planning far out into the future. We can do fixed winds for scenario planning. But since we're flying tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and leave it with forecast winds. Moving down to the cruise section. This piece is really important because who you select as the crew here is who's going to get this information sent directly to their iPad. So I'm going to go ahead and choose myself as PIC, and I will choose Josh as my SIC. If we need to add additional crew, we can just click the Add Crew button here. We could add another SIC, a cabin attendant, and if you need to, let's say you have a contract pilot or something like that, you can put in that user's email address and they will get emailed this flight information as well. Now that we've got our crew set, let's look at our load. We've just built this specific load option, and you'll notice our pilots are already being accounted for. Let's go ahead and add a couple passengers and some cargo. And you'll notice that every time we're making a change over here, our performance summary is recalculating. So we're considering every change that you're making to this flight. Scrolling down, I'm going to skip over ETP, but we'll come right back to it. If we go to the routes section, you'll notice that we currently have a recommended route that is Eurocontrol valid. I'll go ahead and choose it. Our recommended route is coming from our flight planning engine. We're going to consider wind, temperature, aircraft performance, and we're going to try and find you the best fuel and time optimized route for your flight. So I've gone ahead and selected our recommended route, it's Eurocontrol valid, and this is a great starting place. If we scroll right back up to ETP and ETOPS, I'll go ahead and show this section. If we need these, we need to put at least 2 ETP airports. So since I'm familiar with this flight, I'm going to go ahead and put Gander and Shannon. And now that I've put those in, I will check these boxes, point of safe return, and ETOPS. And then you'll notice on the right, if we scroll down a little bit, we've got our map here. I can go ahead and expand this, and we can see those ETOPS rings here. We can also see, we zoom in just a little bit, our different scenarios along this flight, depressurized. We've also got our point of safe return. So we've got some good detail here on this map, making sure we've got that overlap. All right, back into the route section. Like I said, this is a great starting point, but maybe we need to get more specific. We can go into the route builder. And this is a really powerful piece of dispatch. What we're going to focus on for this flight is setting a certain constraint. So we have a lot of different constraints, and we'll get more into that in our next flight plan. But the one I want to look at for this flight is going via a track. We're going to check the box for use any, since we don't have a ton of tracks right now. And we're going to set a minimum altitude of flight level 430. Once we hit Generate New Route at the top right, we're going to see our routing engine working to find us that perfect route. Josh, did you want to say something about this?
Yeah, so the VIA track, and that's one of the features that we've added in the last year to allow us to fly above flight level 410, the normal track altitudes. A lot of operators had requested that feature from us, and we're glad to finally be able to bring it to dispatch. Where it's been proven the most useful is when operators want to fly a northern or southern track. So if they need to divert, they know that you need to make a left turn or a right turn, and it's going to immediately remove them from most of the North Atlantic track traffic.
Thanks, Josh. And as you can see now, we've got our route here, and it's Eurocontrol valid, so we are good to go. One other thing I want to point out here is if we scroll down, if you need to, you have the option to adjust your altitude by leg. So you can click the edit here, choose, change your altitude here until a waypoint or after a waypoint, hit save, and we will add that to your flight plan as well. All right, let's go back to flight at the top left. And now we're pretty much done planning on the left side here. Let's go look at the right side of the page. As I mentioned before, this is our performance summary. So we've got our fuel, our weight numbers, just some high-level information. And at the top right, we've got navlog and briefing. One thing that's great about Dispatch is that we create a briefing packet for you. So if we click on briefing, we're actually going to generate the navlog as well. While we wait for that to load, just to the right of briefing, we've got a More button again. So a lot of the documents that we provide or can include in the briefing, you can quickly grab those single documents right here as well. All right, so we're starting here in our briefing with the navlog. This is our international navlog, and it's just got a little bit more space to make notes, a little bit different structure, and we'll just quickly walk through this. We've got the flight information here at the top. We do support RAIM as well. And again, we've got the fuel weight numbers, more space to make notes, do your altimeter checks, write down your clearance. And then we get into all of the waypoints again. On the right, you have some space to make notes. And as we scroll down to the end of our waypoints, we've got some different altitudes, just in case you need to change your cruise profile or your altitude in flight. You've got some quick information here. And one thing that's going to be included since we added ETP airports is an ETP summary and a detailed ETP report. So quick summary here. And then as we scroll past the airport information, we've got a full ETP report. So all of the numbers that you're going to need for that scenario are all right here in the navlog. After that, we get into the briefing. Here's our vertical cross-section chart. This is going to show you wind, temps, turbulence, icing, terrain, a lot of really good information here. And then we have a top-down view. And as I mentioned, the briefing is customizable, so we can add additional documents like the ICAO form. Another thing we can add here is multiple wind charts at different altitudes. So right here, we've got flight level 420. If we scroll down, I've also got flight level 450, 480. So you've got a really detailed picture of that information. Another thing that will be included on this specific briefing is an ETP wind chart. Going through here, significant weather, METARs, TAFs, NOTAMs, normal navlog and briefing information. All right, so let's close this and go back to our flight plan. So we've got our briefing, we've done all of our planning. I'm going to go ahead and hit save at the bottom right. And once we've hit that save button, we have some new options here. We can file the flight plan, we can release it, which will send it to the crew. Before we file though, we may just want to check the ATC data tab. So we're currently on flight. Let's go over to ATC data. Here, you're going to be able to add any remarks if you need to. Just check your filing information, everything, make sure everything looks correct. And something that we just added is the Flight Watchers tool. Josh, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Caitlin. So what Flight Watchers does is allows all the same email notifications that the crew would receive to be sent to whatever email address is designated as a flight watcher. So if the crew is used to getting filing messages and any sort, basically anything that the crew gets from dispatch in an email format, the flight watcher will also get. And where this is particularly handy is if you have a PIC and an SIC, but you also have a dispatcher that wants to stay in the loop. So the PIC SIC will, of course, receive email notifications, and the dispatcher, as the flight watcher, will also receive those same email notifications.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, this exactly. So I just added someone who was already in the list on our account. But again, you can just add any email address in here and that user will be notified about the flight. Moving down this section here, we have the option to add custom or additional Afton addresses. So we've already got the defaults in here, but you can add more if you need to. And then just below that, you'll be able to see exactly what's being sent to ATC. And we're not actually going to file today, but if we did file, we would start seeing filing updates here on the left. I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and just to the right of ATC data, we have the Files tab. So everything we've shown you so far has been documents in the briefing. Those are included in Dispatch. But what this gives you the opportunity to do is to import your own documents. And so when you release this flight, those documents are going to go straight to the pilot into their iPad as well. So just to show you how easy this is here, I'll just click in to add a file. I've got a form here. It's uploaded. I've got a timestamp. And once I hit save at the bottom right, when I release this flight, this document's going to carry over and the pilots are going to be able to see that directly in ForeFlight. So let's go ahead and release the flight. So just here on the bottom right, I'm going to click release. And you do have the option to choose whether the pilots can modify the flight plan on their iPads or not. For this flight, since we're using ETPs right now, the only way we can do this is to release as read-only. So this is our option. So we'll go ahead and click Release Flight. And then at the bottom left here, we're going to get a timestamp when that flight is released. All right, so here's our timestamp. The flight's been released. It's been pushed straight to the iPads. And as we go along the bottom bar here, you can see our filing status is not filed. We've got that Eurocontrol valid routing. Another thing that we can do is generate a recall number. If you have data link services with a provider, we can turn that on for you. And the last thing here in the center is change history. So if we click view history, if we need to, we can come in here and we can see anyone who's touched the flight. So you've got a full history of anything that's changed in the flight. All right, so we're all done planning this flight. But before we get into the next flight, I want to show you one of our latest and greatest features that just got released in Dispatch. We're going to go over here to the top right and click on the settings. And if you're an administrator in Dispatch, you have access to all of these settings. We're not going to go through all of them today. There are quite a few. But what I want to focus on is the Navlog Builder. When we went through the briefing earlier, we just saw the default international navlog, but a lot of flight departments have their own way that they want their navlog to look. So we have this super powerful tool to give you that option to customize it, set it up the way you want. So I'll just kind of quickly show you what that would look like. What I would recommend is that you go to the international navlog as as our default, as kind of our starting place, and we can click More and Copy. And here I could just say, maybe this is ForeFlight 1. So we can name it whatever we want. Go ahead and save it. And now we've got a duplicate option here. Something that I want to do for my navlog here is I want to upload the company logo. So what I'm going to click is Add Blocks at the top left of the navlog. And I'll click this drop down. So there's a lot of different options different boxes that you can add, things that you can duplicate, titles that you can change. I'm going to go for image, and I will go ahead and grab my logo. I can preview it here, see what it's going to look like. And I'll just go ahead and click Add Info Block. Now it's added it to the bottom of my navlog, but I can just take my mouse, pull it up here, and now I've got it at the top. I can just kind of click and drag, move things around any way that I want. And you'll notice we have some like extra space here, that sort of thing. When we're ready, we can click on Options at the top center and click Condense. And that's just going to bring everything close together again. If we want to just get a quick preview of what this might look like, I've moved a couple things around. I'll click Preview on the right here. And you can see fairly similar to what we had before, but now we've got that company logo. And I didn't do a ton of changes here, but you do have the option to move these around, rename them. A lot of capability here. Let's say I'm already ready for this to be my default navlog. I'm going to hit Save at the top right. And I'm also going to set this as my default. So now when we do our next flight, we generate that briefing. We're going to go ahead and see this as our navlog. Josh, did you want to add anything here?
So sure, Caitlin, thank you. I would encourage users to go into add blocks and look at all the different data blocks that we can add, because there are many more than what you would find on our standard navlog or our international navlog. And in addition, we are adding more blocks, at least monthly with each release. So take a peek there, and I believe that you're going to find some data blocks that you're interested in using.
Great, thanks, Josh. All right, so now that we've set this custom navlog, let's go back and plan our second flight. So at the top right, I'm going to click Flights. All right, so now we're back on the Flights tab, and instead of starting from scratch again, I'm actually going to be leaving my previous destination and going somewhere else with the same crew. So I'm going to have a lot of that information copied over. So here's our flight that we just planned. I'm going to click Edit to go back into the flight planning view, and I'm going to hit Next Flight at the top center. So like I said, everything is just going to carry over anything that we planned previously. So we've still got our same aircraft. Stansted is now our departure, and we're going to go to Dubai. One thing that I haven't spoken about yet is the ability to add a custom airport. Josh, did you want to talk about this at all?
Sure. So why don't you pull up the add a custom airport page? There you go. So a custom airport is something that I use a little bit. If say your passenger has a ranch, for example, that has its own airstrip but does not have an ICAO identifier. What this allows us to do is create an airport that we can flight plan to and from and file to and from. So what we specify then is an airport identifier in the same format as an ICAO identifier, so 4 letters. We can name the airport. Anything is acceptable for an airport name. So you could be My Boss's Ranch or the Test Airport. Then we can specify the latitude, longitude of the airport. If we wanted to, we can also simply right-click on the map, and that will essentially capture the lat-long that we've just right-clicked. It'll automatically populate it. And lastly, we recently added the elevation feature to custom airports, which really enhances and refines our flight planning capabilities because it's counting on a starting altitude of, say, 5,000 feet rather than everything being sea level or an ending altitude being 5,000 feet. So that makes the fuel burn and time presented in the flight plan quite a bit more accurate. Once we've concluded that, we save our custom airport and we're able to use it in future flight planning. You can have it back, Caitlin.
All right, so going back to our flight plan heading to Dubai, we can go ahead and let's say we'll leave our date and time the same. We've got the same call sign. We can choose an alternate here. And we can use alternate routing or not required since we're not flying into Europe. Going down to the fuel section, again, we can change any of this fuel information if we need to. We've still got our reserve policy set as EASA commercial. We could maybe add a contingency policy. Planning with forecast winds. Same crew. We could add someone else if we want. Maybe we drop someone off at Stansted so we can update our load here. We don't need ETP or ETOPS airports for this trip, so I'll go ahead and hide those. And then as we scroll down to the route section, we've got a recommended route. Again, it is Eurocontrol valid, and this is a great starting place for this routing. A lot of times when we're flying in the Middle East, we may have some more constraints that we need to look at. So let's go back into the route builder. And a very popular one that we see in this area for constraints would be avoid fur. And we're not going to have to type this in. We actually will show you which furs you're overflying. So let's say we want to avoid Syria. You can see now it's grayed out on the map. And just to start here with that, let's click Generate New Route. And while that's generating, we can talk about some of the other constraints that are available. So there's a lot of options if you want to go via a certain waypoint or avoid a waypoint. Same thing for departures and arrivals, airways as well, which we'll talk about in a moment. And another powerful one here is partial route. So if you get some overflight permits and you have a partial route, you can paste that in here and we will generate an optimized route around what you've provided. All right, so now we have our previous route over here in gray and our new route that we've generated in blue. We can see over here it is Eurocontrol valid. But let's take a look at the route report. So up here at the top center, we've got the route report. And this is going to take a look at the airways that you're overflying and compare them against the Jeppesen Airway Manual. So we're going to let you know if there are any airway restrictions along your route of flight. And Josh, do you want to talk about this new tool here?
Sure. So previously we had a PDF route report, and in the last year we've added this form route report, which allows checkboxes to add as avoidances. So in this case, we can see between, say, Parex intersection and Tabney intersection on Airway Whiskey 158, that there's a restriction of RNAV 5. So supposing that we did not have RNAV 5, what we would do is simply click avoid, and then we would avoid the selected segments. In that case, a new route is generated that avoids the segment that has the restriction that we are unable to comply with.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. This is a really big time saver. We know that going through the Jeppesen Airway Manual could definitely take some time, so this is going to get you exactly the airway restrictions that you need to know about. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. But let's say we've got our restrictions in place that we need. And let's go back to the flight. One thing that we didn't talk about on our last flight, because we didn't have anything to show for this one, is in between your performance summary and the map, you've got flight advisories. And you can see for our destination and our alternate, we've got some NOTAMs here. Josh, do you want to speak about this a little bit?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you, Caitlin. So flight advisory is something that we've added that allow the dispatcher or the planner at a quick glance to see any issues that might affect their flight. In this case, we have destination NOTAM's flight advisory telling us that multiple runways are closed for certain operations. The certain operations wording should kind of clue us in to we need to review that NOTAM to see what those certain operations are. So as we view the NOTAM, we can see here that on certain dates and between certain hours, the runways are closed. In this case, 30 right is closed between 0830 and 1700 UTC. If the certain operations wording is missing, that would imply that the runway is closed for all operations all day for planning purposes. The flight advisories are a feature that we're adding to with each release, so stay tuned for more advisories as time goes on.
Thanks, Josh. All right, so let's say everything looks good for this flight as well. I'm going to go ahead and let's grab the briefing so we can see that new nav log. While that's loading, I'm going to hit save at the bottom right. And I'm going to go ahead and release this flight as well so I can show you guys what this looks like. When we get this release prompt, we have the option to release as read-only or editable. So again, your choice how you want to release that to the pilots. Looks like we've got our briefing loaded in our new tab. And you can see right here exactly the way that we set it up in the navlog builder. We've now got our logo at the top and we've got it looking exactly the way we want it. All right, so now that we've planned and released these flights, I'm going to switch over to my iPad and we're going to take a look at what this looks like for the crew. All right, so now we're on my iPad and we are currently in ForeFlight Mobile on the Flights tab. So you'll notice since I set myself as PIC, I've got these flights delivered straight to my iPad. Here's the 2 flights that we planned. And I'll go ahead and first tap on our first flight, the Teterboro to Stansted. And if you recall, this one was released as read-only. So you'll notice we can still grab the briefing, grab the document that we added, but we can't make any changes to the flight. Everything is grayed out, but we've still got all the details that we need.
And one improvement we made in Dispatch recently is the auto refresh of briefings and nav logs. Previously with the read-only flight, the briefing was sometimes dated. Now, every hour up to 1 hour before the flight, if enabled, the auto refresh will automatically give the newest weather data, newest performance data, NOTAMs, etc., that we would normally see in a nav log or briefing. This occurs automatically, like I say, up to 1 hour prior to the flight. And the data is automatically pushed to the crew's ForeFlight Mobile, so they always have the most recent navlog and most recent briefing.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, you're going to be able to keep up with everything here. Just to quickly show you the difference, if I go to our Dubai flight, you can see on the right side that our departure, destination, a lot of our planning options are in blue, which means we can modify them as the crew. Let's say that we are ready to go. Everything looks good here. We've got everything we need. The last thing to do is tap the Send To button at the top right corner and send this flight to the map. We tuck away the flight plan there. And here's our route, all of our waypoints. If we zoom in just to show you, I've got the Jeppesen charts pulled up here as well. So all the details you need right there. All right, so that's everything that we wanted to show you today. I'm going to hand it back to you, Sam.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. Before we get to Q&A, I just want to outline some resources that you can follow up on to learn more about Dispatch and get started in the process of adopting Dispatch. You can learn more at foreflight.com/dispatch, And you can sign up to get started with Dispatch at foreflight.com/dispatch form. That page has a form that you can fill out just to provide some basic information about your operation. And our sales team will then reach out to you for more information and to set up a live Dispatch demo based on that information. You can also register for more of our webinars and watch all of the past webinars we've done over the past, it's almost been a year now, at foreflight.com/onfrequency. And you can contact our sales team directly at sales@foreflight.com. So let's answer some questions. All right, we've got a few questions here. First up, when will we be able to release flights from dispatch in an editable mode when using ETPs or ETOPS? And Caitlin, do you want to take that one?
Sure, no problem. So we are currently working to support some of the features that are in Dispatch in ForeFlight Mobile. So that's why you're seeing a bit of a disconnect there. But like I said, we are working to get to parity. So stay tuned. We don't have anything to announce just yet, but stay tuned. That will be coming soon.
All right, next up, you demonstrated the presentation of North Atlantic tracks. If multiple are presented, if multiple of them are available, how do I select a particular track? And Josh, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So you're able to select a particular track by using the route builder. And once you open the route builder, you're given a list of constraints or a window that lists the constraints, and you can choose via track. And at that point, you're able to choose whether you want to use any track, or if you're westbound or eastbound, the particular track, whether it's eastbound and you have, in this case for today would be, I believe it would be track Zulu, westbound would be track Alpha, and those pre-populate into the drop-down menu. And then from there, once you've selected the track that you're interested in, you generate a new route and it will be utilizing that track.
Next up, what is the time frame for which forecasted winds are provided for in dispatch? And Josh, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So in general, you can count on forecast winds for about a 1 week, about a 7-day period. Obviously, just like any forecast, the closer you are to your departure date and time, the more reliable the forecast will be. And that's just the nature of weather. But essentially, more than 7 days, you can count on getting historical winds. Less than 7 days, you can count on getting forecast winds.
Great. Next up, is there a way to set default rules for the company account, like, for example, to always avoid an FIR? And Caitlin, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, definitely. So something that we didn't get into too much is the dispatch settings. So something that we have available today in dispatch is operational rules. So when we were going through the demo today, you saw that we were doing a lot of things manually. We were setting, avoiding a fur, making those changes per flight. But what we can do in operational rules is we can set, you know, these aircraft, or when we're flying in this part of the world, we always want to avoid this fur. We always want our 550 to land with 500 pounds of extra fuel. So there's a lot of defaults that you can set so that a lot of the planning that we did today would be automated for your organization.
Thanks, Caitlin. Next up, regarding the logo photo that you added to your custom navlog, what type of photo files does Dispatch support? Caitlin, can you
So
answer that?
there are quite a few different options there. We support a lot of different file types. So I specifically updated, I think I used a PNG file, um, but most of the common file types are supported.
Great. Next one, can the pilot sign the weight and balance sheet electronically? If possible, under what regulation or argument can an electronic signature be approved? And Josh, or either one of you can take this if you know the answer to it.
So I think you'd have to check with your regulatory authorities on what they want for signing. However, what I use for weight and balance signing and nav-log signing myself in an FAA jurisdiction is I export the documents that ForeFlight Dispatch generates into our ForeFlight Mobile document section. And using the Apple Pen, or Apple Pencil, I should say, I'm able to add my signature to it, annotate anything else that might be required by the regulations. And that takes care for the advisory circular of a portion of what's required in the FAA world.
Good answer. Next up, can you upload company-specific engine out charts? And Josh, can you answer that one as well?
Sure. I think that would be a great thing to do for business accounts that have several users, of course. And one of the things that you can do with us is you can link your files to one of the various storage mediums that we do support. And I think your best bet would be to contact the team at foreflight.com for that, for specific assistance on getting your charts into the storage cloud that your company may use.
Right, yeah, and the cloud documents feature is handy in addition to the ability to upload documents directly to individual flights, especially in the case of documents that would apply to many different flights rather than just one. So uploading them to the documents view makes them available at all times. Next question here, how do you archive flight plans and for how long? Caitlin, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So we we have several servers that we maintain all of our data on, and we will keep flight plans forever. Unless you go into your account and delete the flight plan yourself, it will stay in our system forever, and they don't take up a lot of space. So you'll be able to easily go back and retrieve any historical flight plans.
And one thing to keep in mind with that as well is that any flight plan that has been filed from dispatch cannot be deleted. So once it's in dispatch, it's pretty much there for the duration.
Great. Next up, with reference to Eurocontrol, are the routes user-friendly? And Josh, can you answer that one?
Absolutely, Sam. So all of our routes that we generate provide Eurocontrol validation when they go through Eurocontrol airspace. And so what you're basically looking for is the green Eurocontrol banner on the bottom of your dispatch flight's edit view. And as long as it's Eurocontrol valid, you can assume that flight meets the Eurocontrol restrictions that are put out.
What kind of performance data from the aircraft is managed from ForeFlight? Caitlin, can you try to give an answer to that?
Yeah. So we recently, I guess within the last couple of years, we released our performance data. And what you saw today, what we were planning with was the en route performance data. And that's coming directly from the AFM, the manufacturer data. So the cruise profiles that we saw to select from were the published cruise profiles from the manual. And just to let you guys know, we do have runway performance, runway analysis, and weight and balance that are coming as well. And we are working directly with the OEMs to get that data built.
All right, next question. When is this coming out? Everything that we demonstrated in this webinar is already available, actually, if you have purchased Dispatch or if you're on a Dispatch trial. So if you're looking to try it out and see how it can be used with your own operation, feel free to email sales@foreflight.com or go to that Dispatch form link that you can see on the screen now, and you'll be able to get set up with a free demo of Dispatch after talking with our sales team, so you can see how it works for yourself. All right, one more question here. Since we can make or create an airport in Dispatch, can you make an approach plate? And Josh, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. You cannot make an approach plate. Basically, approach plates are something that perhaps are operator specific that you may have for yourself, and it's not something that we support within Dispatch or ForeFlight Mobile.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning though that as part of our content packs feature, it is possible, although you can't create the approach plate, using Dispatch the way that you can customize that navlog. If you have a set of custom approach plates, then you can put them into a content pack and upload them to ForeFlight in such a way that they act essentially the same as any of the approach plates that you could access by default with ForeFlight. So that's one of the nice benefits. And you can even, if those approach plates are in, I believe if they're in a GeoPDF format, so a geo-referenced PDF, those can actually be geo-referenced on the map, and you can send them to the map. You can see your position on them. So they behave exactly the same way that the built-in plates do in ForeFlight. So although you can't create those plates just from scratch within ForeFlight, if you do have a set of custom plates, then it's not too difficult to get them added to ForeFlight. All right, well, that will wrap it up for this webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Caitlin and Josh, for the awesome presentation. If you have any questions about Dispatch, feel free to reach out to sales@foreflight.com. And we hope to see you on the next webinar.